Hey, everybody. Well, I'm really sorry I couldn't be in class today, but my youngest daughter has just caught some kind of virus, and we had hoped that staying home with grandma yesterday would have taken care of it, but she's still a little bit under the weather. So I'm going to be staying home with her, and I'm going to be doing my best to help you guys understand what we're trying to accomplish here and the last target of Unit 2. So, previously, what you should have been working on, and we will be doing our practice quiz on this stuff on Thursday, we're moving it from Tuesday to Thursday, was taking the equation of a linear function or relation and then being able to create the graph and name its characteristics. Well, what we'll be doing today is reversing that process. We'll either be giving you the graph or we'll be giving you some characteristics, some of the DNA of our linear function, and we're going to be expecting you to be able to create an appropriate equation to represent that linear function. Now, the heart of everything is the forms. We've been talking about that from the beginning. When we are reading an equation that's written in the form, we have to understand them, but also when we're trying to write equations, we have to understand the forms of our linear functions so that we know, based on the information that's given to us, what is the appropriate formula to use to write an equation. And what I've created here is a flow chart. You can see there is Super Saiyan Goku in Super Saiyan Blue there. That doesn't really have anything to do with the math. I just had a big empty space in the flow chart and thought that was a pretty cool picture. So you can enjoy that if you're an anime fan. So really, this boils down to three questions. The ability to decide which formula to do starts by asking yourself, what information do we know? All right, so this is the first question. And really, that information is either going to come from a graph, right? So you'll see some examples where we're going to give you the graph of the linear function, or it's going to come from some set, some combination of character. No, that's not even close. Characteristics, right? We kind of talked about this as the DNA of our functions. All right. And regardless of what is given to you, what characteristics, really the answer to this question of what information do you know really follows only two possible outcomes. So the hopeful outcome, which makes our lives easier, you can see following the flow chart to the left, is that we are given the slope, m, and some solution, some ordered pair, right, of our linear function. If that's the case, then we can just follow this flow chart right to question number 2, which is, what is the slope? All right, but sometimes if we answer that question, we will not be given the slope, and we'll actually be given two ordered pairs, right? So we'll have two of these ordered pairs of some kind. Now, it is possible with two ordered pairs, with the right ordered pairs, that we could end up writing an equation in standard form. However, you can see based on the big red X following that arrow, we are not going to ask you to do that. There's levels of complexity to writing an equation in standard form, and the juice just isn't worth the squeeze based on the, in my opinion, as I've stated, the uselessness of the standard form, right? Those two equations, those two specific ordered pairs would be the intercepts, the x and y intercepts. Technically, if you knew the x and the y intercept, both of them, you would be able to leverage that information into standard form. But again, please, for the love of everything holy, do not try and write an equation in standard form, because we are not going to ask you to do that. So that is never the right answer on the test. All right. But what do we need to do if we are given two ordered pairs, two solutions? Well, guys, we still need to know the slope, because you can see based on this flow chart, we need to get to the second question, which is, what is the slope? And you can't answer the question of what is the slope if you don't know what it is. So this is bringing back our slope formula from the previous test. Now, this is not an equation of a line. In no way, shape, or form is this your answer. This is just a way to find the slope of our linear function or relation if it's not given to us. All right? So what information do you know? slope in a solution, go left, right down to question number 2 down here. If the answer is not the slope, but at least 2 ordered pairs, use slope formula and then get to question number 2. Regardless of which path you take, notice we always end up with the same second question here. What is the slope? Now, there are 4 possible outcomes from the slope. Slope can be positive, that's slope dude going uphill. Slope can be negative, that's slope dude going downhill. Now you can see both of those outcomes, positive or negative, lead us to a third question, which we'll get to in just a minute here. All right. But the 2 outcomes that don't lead to a question because they lead to an end of the flow chart or our slope that is 0, right? That's our cross-country skiing situation, which is 0 fun, and our horizontal line, which would be written in horizontal form, or our vertical form, which the slope would be undefined. That's when slope dude becomes a human puddle and therefore undefined, right? So again, the whole point of this is to follow the flow chart to a specific form to use. So if the slope's undefined or the slope's 0, guys, you're done. Take vertical form, take horizontal form, write your equation, you're golden. All right, which I am sure I will be watching K-pop Demon Hunters possibly multiple times tomorrow. All right, so let's just say it's not 0 undefined, and our slope is positive or negative. So this brings us to our third and final question. Do you know the y-intercept? Now, let's just refresh our memories here. The y-intercept, remember, is a very special ordered pair. Where the x-coordinate is always 0. The y-coordinate can be any number, but we know we are looking at a y-intercept when the x-coordinate, the domain, is 0. All right? Now, here's the deal. The answer to this question, if no, is 100% of the time point slope form. If you do not know the y-intercept, but you have an ordered pair that is something other than the y-intercept, you got to go with point slope form. If the answer is yes, you can use slope-intercept form, right? Because we know the y-intercept gives us the value of b, which we can just drop right into slope-intercept form. However, here's the deal, guys. You can also do point slope form if you say yes. Because here's the deal. The y-intercept, guys, as 0, b can also be thought of as x1, y1. While it is a special ordered pair, a special point, guys, it's still a point. And if it's a point, then we can use point slope form. Now, I am always going to model using slope-intercept form because it's just simpler and easier to use. There's no risk of simplifying or multiple variables. We don't have the negative variables, which we've got to think about, tell us the opposite of what they are, right? Slope-intercept form is just a little simpler, a little more efficient. However, because the y-intercept is a point, you can still use point slope form, treating 0 as x1 and whatever the b value is as y1. All right, well, that's our flow chart. So why don't we make sure we get this down in our notes? If you need to pause to write stuff down, if you haven't gotten it all down yet, let's do that. And then let's take this baby for a spin here and see if we can write some equations based on some specific information that's given to us. All right. Well, now that you've got the flow chart written down, let's practice using it. And guys, you're going to see that as you work your way through this a couple of times, I think you're going to get to the point where you don't even really need the flow chart, as long as we talked about this at the beginning. You know the names of your tools, you know what your tools are for. Those 5 forms, right? We've talked about it since the beginning. We're going to give you the equations, but you've got to know everything about those. Same thing with this flow chart, guys. This is a great tool. It's like training wheels to help us get things rolling, but you will not have access to this flow chart on the test. So we will have to be able to be burning this into our memory here, right? So let's take a look at this situation. So we're given a point and the slope of a linear function here. So answer to our first question, what information do I know? I'm going to go left. I am given the slope and I'm given an ordered pair. So I can follow that down to question number 2. What is the slope? All right, well, pretty clearly, guys, that slope is negative, right? That's a negative slope. So we can now follow the middle line down to our third question, which is, do we know the y-intercept? Pretty clearly, this ordered pair is a no-go. That is not a y-intercept because this number right here is not 0. All right, so we follow our last arrow to the formula we should use, point slope form. So for this set of information, the really only way to write a linear equation is to use y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. All right, now we got to drop in the appropriate information here. Y and X, we talked about this way back. Those have to stay variables. So, guys, you're not going to ever touch the X and the Y variable. But M, X1 and Y1 all need to be replaced with specific values from the information that's given to you. So we know X1 is the X coordinate of the point we know. Y1 is the Y coordinate of the point. And obviously, M we can see is given to us right here as -2. So if I go through that process, Y stays Y, Y1, I drop in 7, right? And you can see this is how we end up with that whole line opposite situation. Y1 is positive 7, but when we drop it in, because it's minus Y1, it looks like -7, right? M, drop in -2. We've got X, and now this is where, again, I am minus -3. Well, guys, minus a negative, these right here become a positive. So what do we end up with? Y minus 7 times X times -2 times the quantity X plus 3. That is the equation of our linear function that would contain the ordered pair -3, 7 and have a slope of -2. Easy peasy, right? All right, let's take a look at number 2. We'll try and go through these a little quicker here. What do we know? Well, we have a point and we have a slope, right? So we can go left on our flow chart, following our flow chart down to what is the slope? Well, we can see that this slope is indeed positive, right? So we follow the middle arrow down to the third question, which is, do we know the y-intercept? And the answer to that is yes. This right here, because of that x value being 0, is definitely the y-intercept. And so what that tells me is my b value is 2. I know m is 2/3. So if we take our formula for y equals mx plus b, or we all know what does fx say, right? Y. So we could have either of those. We can replace m with 2/3. We replace b with 2. And Bob's your uncle. We've got an equation there. And if you're wondering why I said Bob's your uncle, I don't know. It's a saying. I like to think it comes from the movie What About Bob with Bill Murray, which if you've never seen that movie, you really should check it out. Just remember, it's all about baby steps. But if you you're looking for something to do this week, What About Bob? Check it out. It's classic. All right, so these are the ones we kind of hope for here. Let me check my colors here. Yep. Right. So if we look at this, again, we go left, go down the flow chart. What is the slope? Now, slope is 0. Slope Dude is having 0 fun because he is cross-country skiing on a horizontal line. A horizontal line, we know, is always going to have the equation of y equals a number. And here's the key. We don't care about the x coordinate, right? In a horizontal line, the x coordinates just don't matter because what makes it horizontal, it's all about the y coordinate. So we can see y equals 2, and boom, there's our equation. All right, if you wanted to, I would also accept f of x equals 2, right? Because again, what is that saying? In function f, for any x value, y equals 2. All right, both of those would be acceptable answers. All right, let's do one more here together. 5. 5 is the other side of this coin here. We have a human puddle at the bottom of a vertical line, right? So we know that that is a vertical situation, meaning we don't care about y because a vertical line is all about the x's, right? X equals, we can see what is the x coordinate of the point we know, it's -3. So our equation for this situation would be x equals -3. All right, so that's all pretty good and well when we follow the flow chart to the left, but what about the situation we talked about where we are not given the slope? All right, well, let's look at number 10 real quick here. So if we look at this, we are not given the slope. Sorry, just checking the color there. Want to make sure I'm staying color coordinated. we're not given the slope here, guys. So here's the deal. We need to know what the slope is. But the good news is we have two ordered pairs. Here's my first ordered pair. Here's my second ordered pair. So y2 minus y1, 6 minus 2, -9 minus -9 gives me 4 over 0. And oh no, anything divided by 0 is undefined. So since we have, right, slope is undefined, this literally is just like number 5, guys. That is a vertical situation. We know it's going to be x equals a number. And notice, guys, look, again, we don't care about the y's because look at the x coordinates. They're both -9 because, again, every point will have an x coordinate of -9, which is why our equation is x equals -9. All right, one last one to look at here. We are given two ordered pairs, so we go to the right. We do not know the slope, so we got to do the work to find it ourselves. I'll call this my first ordered pair, this my second ordered pair, 5 minus -3, y2 minus y1, 6 minus 4, right? That's going to be 8 over 2, and my slope is 4. So here's the deal, guys. M is positive 4. So we need to know, the last question is, do we know the y-intercept? And you can see, guys, neither of these are going to be the y-intercept. So we are going to use point slope form here. So we're going y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. The question I have, though, is which point should we use, right? Point slope form, we only use one point, and that's one of the biggest problems people have in an example like 11 is they think they have to use both points. But guys, here's the deal. It's point slope, meaning singular. You're only going to use one. So which point is the correct point to use? And if you're thinking, does it really matter, Mr. Dahl? You're exactly correct. We can write a correct equation for this situation using either point. So if I use 4, -3, I will have y plus 3. Remember, it's the opposite of what it looks like, equals 4 times x. Oops, that's a really bad parenthesis. Let's try that again. Times x minus 4. Or if I use the other ordered pair, oops, nope. We'll have y minus 5 equals 4 times x minus 6. While these equations, guys, look different, they're actually both equations that will give us the same exact line. They're the same exact function, the same exact infinite number of ordered pairs. They're just using a different point of that infinite number of ordered pairs to write the equation. And that's where point slope form can be good, but can also be confusing because it's sometimes confusing to look at two equations that look different but are actually the same exact function. All right, so why don't you go ahead and try the other examples here. Pause the video and then come back to check your work and see how you did. Ready? And pause. So now that you've got a few more examples under your belt and you've checked the answer, you guys, if you have questions on this stuff, if you have questions on the notes, shoot me an email, right? I'm hopefully going to be somewhat available to respond throughout the day. Just sitting on the couch watching K-pop Demon Hunter over and over again. I can get back to you through the notes. And if you start practicing this in Class Cake, which we'll talk about at the end of the video, please use the hand raise icon in Class Cake, and I'll definitely try to be checking that throughout the day and get back to you if you have any questions. But the last thing we want to take a look at now is graphs. Now, the nice thing about graphs are 14 and 16, guys, you literally should do almost no work on these because immediately we should recognize that 14 is indeed a vertical line, all right? So visually, we can see right away it's vertical, which we know right away means we're in x equals. We shouldn't even need the flow chart. And what is the x coordinate of every single point? It's -4. So right away, we know the equation of the line that turns slope dude into a human puddle is x equals -4. All right, 16. So what do we got going on in 16? Very clearly, that is a horizontal line. It is flat. Slope dude is cross-country skiing, having zero fun. And, we know that's y equals a number. Well, what is that number? Well, we can see right there the y coordinate of every ordered pair is -6. So our equation is y equals -6. And so, guys, in these situations, the graph actually makes the vertical and horizontal situation even more obvious than it was before. All right, now let's talk about 15, because 15 it's when it's going to get a little cray up in her. All right, you can see very clearly there are 7 precise points that we have made very observable on this graph. So that means you could use point slope form for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different equations. You could write 7 equations that have some different numbers in them, guys, and all of them will be the same linear function, the same exact set of infinite points that form that line. But if you also notice, guys, that one of these points, one of these 7 points, is actually also the y-intercept. All right, this is where slope-intercept form is helpful, because there's only one correct way to write slope-intercept form, because there's only one y-intercept. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to focus on the fact that the y-intercept is 0, 3, which tells me the b value is 3. And then I'm going to look here and say, okay, well, I'm going to go down 2, that's -2, and write 3. So I can see here my slope rise of -2, run of 3, slope is -2/3. So I'm going to use my, let's go with, what does fx say here on this one, just to get some practice with it. F of x equals mx plus b. So f of x equals -2/3 x plus 2. No, 3. Why did I write 2 up there? Hopefully you're sitting there watching the video saying, what is he doing? Why did he write 2? All right, there we go. This is late. All right, it's not that late. I don't know. I'm just out of it here a little. So that's what we got. F of x equals -2/3 x plus 3. All right, now again, if you chose to use any of those 7 points and wrote a point slope form with those ordered pairs, that would also get you correct answers, correct answer on the test. So literally, guys, there would be 8 correct answers that I would give full credit for on the test. I'd recommend slope-intercept form because it just keeps your life as error-free as possible. All right, let's take a look at 17. Now, 17, we've got 3 precise points, but none of those are the y-intercept. And you might say to yourself, oh, but if I just continue the slope, but if you do that, guys, what you're going to end up with, you'll see that the y-intercept is going to be a decimal. So in this case, because our y-intercept, even if we were to continue this, right, we can see we're going to count this in a second. We're going down 4 and right 3. If I go down 4 and right 3, that means I'm crossing the intercept here, and we just aren't going to be able to know what that is. So that's going to take slope-intercept form off the table. But what it does leave on the table, guys, are 3 possible outcomes here for point slope form. And I would accept, as long as you correctly identify those ordered pairs and the slope, and plug that into point slope form, I would accept any of those 3 equations for full credit here. All right, so why don't you go ahead and try 17, pick your favorite ordered pair, and let's see what you come up with for point slope form. Ready? Pause the video and try that now. Welcome back. So which was your favorite? -8, 2, -5, -3, or -8, -2, -8? Again, you can see down here I kind of labeled the points A, B, and C and labeled the equations based on them. But again, this is the crazy thing with point slope form. All 3 of those equations look very different, but they are actually the same exact linear function, the same exact infinite number of ordered pairs that would give us that line there. All right, gang? Well, that's what we got. When we come back on Thursday, we're going to hit up a practice quiz, not only on this, writing our equations, but also coming back to target 4B here, where we're doing the opposite. We're giving you the equation. You got to make the graph and the characteristics. All right, guys, in Class Kick, there are tons and tons of examples here. If you have not yet practiced, you can see, well, even going all the way back here to, if you want some extra practice with just domain and range, you can see we got 2 pages of graphs you can work on domain and range. Then we've got 5, 6, 7, 8. Then we're into 3, not 10. Yeah, so it just keeps going. Right now, here's this stuff we talked about where we're not giving you the equation, but you have to still create the graph. And then you can see 2 pages of those. And then here we are into what we just did, tons of pages, some example, some real life word problems. Obviously, very clearly, a squirrel is wanting to eat bacon. I mean, what squirrel wouldn't want to eat bacon? All right. And then even just for good measure, just 2 more pages. So guys, just tons of opportunities. Do I expect you to do every single problem? Absolutely not. Right? You have the freedom to do as much or as little as you need, but we really do need to come back on Thursday, guys. Really putting some effort into target 4B and 4C here, having all of this stuff either locked in or come with questions, right? I'm certainly not expecting you guys to understand everything from watching a video and practicing on your own. So please, if you're not going to ask me questions in Class Kick, oh, I said, yep, remember in Class Kick, guys, don't forget to use the little hand icon. All right, the little hand icon. When you click on that, this will show up and I'll know you asked me a question. So, all right, gang. Hope you had are having a good day or are going to have a good day, depending on which block I'm talking to you. And I will see you back in the classroom on Thursday.